Sanjeev, your perspective, is there a divide?
I think there certainly is. I mean, the old order is clearly blowing up, literally in some cases around the world. And I think what we are going to end up with is not so much two separate blocks, which are nice and neat, like in the Cold War, but basically a series of, or rather a web of bilateral relationships. Now, in that network of bilateral relationships, there will be two centers of gravity. One is going to be China, and the other is going to be the US. And so the problem for the European Union or India and many other countries is going to be, where in that network do you place yourself? Now, as things stand, India will, of course, want to have relationships with both China and the US. But I think the way we have chosen to stay out of RCEP. We are instead pursuing free trade agreements with the European Union. We already have one with the UK. We are also negotiating one with the US. So it's quite clear that although in this web we are a separate node, we will probably be tilting westward. So in that sense, I think that's how we are negotiating this. Now, this is not an easy thing to do, let me tell you, because in the past, we have had some difficulty dealing with particularly the European Union, for example. So I've been working in the government for 8.5 years, and before that I was at the European Bank. And let me say that negotiating with the European Union was always a very difficult thing, because either some sort of non-tariff barrier type thing like environmental, social, governance norms, CBAM, etc., would be thrown at you, and either you would be expected to bend to it, or you had to walk away. So despite all of that, I would say this churn has, in fact, if anything, caused a certain amount of realism in Brussels that has allowed us to progress further down this path of free trade agreement negotiations than I would have imagined a few years ago.
Chancellor Kurz, I would put it the other way around. Negotiating with the EU, Sanjeev says, is difficult.
He's right.
No, but negotiating with India, the EU claims, and various bilateral partners claim, is far more difficult. You never seem to be able to reach an agreement. Well, would you agree or not?
I don't know if I could agree on that. So let's start with the European Union. I think the structure of the European Union is not easy. So there is not one center of power. Yeah, you have the Parliament, you have the Council, you have the Commission. So negotiating with the European Union, as you described it, is not easy. There's always elections somewhere. Positions sometimes change. So I think, unfortunately, the structure is how it is. Second, I think the European Union in the past always thought that it's the center of the world. The world has changed, and more places in the world who do not see Europe as the center of the world anymore. So I think also the European Union has to become more decent in negotiating with other countries like India. And third, I think I'm optimistic now. Why? Because of the new US administration and their very disruptive view on tariffs. I would say that probably there is now a momentum in the negotiations with India. And I think these negotiations on free trade started in 2007,
long time ago, 20 years ago.
Correct, yeah. But probably there is now a new momentum, because what Europe understood in the last few months, I would say, is that there is a need to have partners. And in the past, I had the impression that many European politicians liked it to travel around and lecture the world and tell everybody else that they should behave like Europeans. I think now, hopefully, there is more and more understanding that the world is diverse, that there are different systems, and that Europe should find partners and should not be left alone in the end. So from my perspective, probably there is a momentum now, and I think it would be very positive not only for India but mainly also for Europe.
So my follow-up question, and Sanjeev, you can start with this. Are these discussions today more transactional, or they become more realistic and less transactional? Or let me put it another way. FTA stands for free trade agreements. But a free trade agreement to be successful also has to be a fair trade agreement. And the dispute is that what one party thinks is fair and the other party thinks is not fair. So where do we reach this win-win?
So the thing that he just pointed out, till recently the term fair would have been used in a peculiar way. And he said, as he pointed out, it would have been used in a sort of lecturing sort of way.
Of course.
And it's very difficult. You see, when you use, for example, the term European values, to a formerly colonized country, it sounds completely different meaning. So we were talking past each other. And so I think what has happened now is that Brussels has stopped using these kind of terms. They understand things like CBAM, don't renew friends. And I think President Trump has done everyone, at least us, a favor by tearing up the usual conversation and the usual script. So I think there is now, the conversations are real. There is an understanding that, once you have agreed on a certain set of rules, and presumably, then within those rules, free and fair mean the same thing.
So, are there a certain set of rules we are agreeing on at this point of time?
Yes, we are in fairly advanced conversations.
And what are those?
I'm not in a position to divulge that, but you have seen Commerce Minister stating that we are making progress, and that is not just true with the European Union. We are making good progress even with the US. And of course, we already have free trade agreements with places like Australia, Japan, UAE, and of course the UK.
So, Chancellor Kurz, are we today in a position where the negotiating parties are in a better position, a clearer position to understand each other's compulsions, to start to sit down and sort each other's issues with regard to trade?
I hope so. I think there's a big chance now that there's an understanding in the European Union. There are some new players like Chancellor Merz in Germany, who is doing a great job, and others. I think there's a chance for a better understanding for the rest of the world. And I think this behavior of traveling around and lecturing everybody, this is something that has to stop, and I hope it's going to stop. So from my perspective, if you look at Europe, if you look at the economic growth rates, if you look at the fact that we are an aging society, India is an incredible important partner for Europe, and especially the fact that you have so much talent, the fact that India has such a young society, but also if you look at areas like AI, where India is one of the leading countries in the world, I think there's a lot of room for cooperation, and from my perspective, the EU has difficulties, of course, understandably, with Russia at the moment. There are huge tensions. At the same time, the relationship with China is not easy. The EU itself described China as a partner, economic competitor and rival at the same time. So not an easy relationship, as you can imagine, describing such a relationship yourself with these worlds. And Also with the US, I would say the relationship has been much easier in the past for most European countries. So from my perspective, there's a good momentum now, and we should use it.